Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rowing with the Homies. I'm Finlos. Today is May 19th, 2025. I hope that you're able to get in some movement today. I hope you're able to find some rhythm, find some focus, find some place to think, and just get moving through your day. No matter what your action or what your movement is, I'm genuinely glad you're choosing to spend this time with me. This space, Rowing with the Homies, is where we connect what's happening out there in the world, whether it's current events, big philosophical questions, or a piece of media that makes us think, with what's happening right here within ourselves, in our bodies, in our minds, in our experiences. It's about finding the link between the external landscape and our internal one. And today, we're going to explore the nuances of leadership and age across different cultures, the uncomfortable truths about aging in our own society, and how, in this middle phase of life, I'm finding unexpected ways to manage the currents of depression. And to begin, what's on my mind today is the recent news about President Joe Biden's prostate cancer diagnosis, which his office revealed or released a lot of details about. And that prostate cancer has metastasized to the bone, which means that it's at a fairly advanced stage. And it's interesting that his office released so much detail, especially considering how relatively quiet or maybe even defensive they've been about his cognitive decline, some of his health issues that he was dealing with towards the end of his presidency. While this disclosure, as transparent as it is, talking about the advanced nature and the types of treatments that he's going to receive, it seems transparent, but there has been a lot of talk, particularly toward the end of his presidency, about how President Biden's age and health decline were covered up or hidden. And so the recent cancer diagnosis, while disclosed with this clarity right now, brings up the uncomfortable possibility that this condition may have been known for some time. It makes me wonder about the full picture behind the public image of these people that we elect into office and upon whom we heap so much power. And this isn't unique to Biden, of course. Thinking about the past here in the US, Franklin D. Roosevelt, for example, contracted polio in 1921, leaving him paralyzed and reliant on a wheelchair. And while his disability was well known, the extent of it and his dependence on mobility aids were largely minimized. And of course, pre-internet, it just wasn't publicized. Photos of him often showed him seated or standing with assistants, carefully crafting an image of even robust health. And there's Ronald Reagan, who years after leaving office publicly announced that he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. But there was, of course, a lot of debate about whether he showed signs of cognitive decline during his second term. It raises the question about how much the public truly knows, or has a right to know, about a leader's fitness. And of course, that brings us to our current president, Donald Trump. His health reports have faced their own share of scrutiny, while his White House positions have generally declared him in excellent cognitive and physical health. These reports have often been criticized for lacking the comprehensive medical data you'd expect. They possess few substantive details beyond broad pronouncements. It's a pattern, a tendency for leaders, especially older ones, to hide or minimize their health issues, driven by concerns about public perception, and political vulnerability. They'll offer limited disclosure, control public appearances, rely on favorable physician statements, or even blame other factors for physical changes. This is interesting in and of itself, considering questions of transparency and privacy and what's the balance there when it comes to elected officials. While I am generally in favor of privacy, I think that different standards are required when we're talking about, again, our presidents who carry so much power and potential to create drastic disruptions. And their mental and physical well-being are essential questions. But this also got me thinking about how people in general view leadership, and where do we develop our thoughts and our definitions of what good leadership looks like. And not just from an American perspective, because that's going to give us a very specific portrait of what political leadership looks like. But also, I'm really interested in this question of leadership from multiple lenses, considering multiple cultures and differing sources in both history and literature. Because the interaction between rulers and the rules is not just an American phenomenon. Across different cultures, throughout history, the relationship between age, wisdom, and leadership takes on diverse forms. And I think where I'm going to start is one of the most famous epic poems in Western or European literature, one that really challenged me to consider how I think about the relationship between age and leadership, and that's Beowulf. The epic poem Beowulf offers a powerful commentary on the phases of life and corresponding leadership styles, because I think something that is very important is the perceived relationship between youth or agedness and one's capability to lead. In his youth, Beowulf in the narrative embodies the heroic warrior ideal. He's characterized by immense physical strength, courage, and a desire for glory, but also a willingness to confront monstrous threats, such as Grendel and Grendel's mother. His leadership is active, it's decisive, and it's based on personal prowess and direct intervention. And this phase of his life emphasizes individual heroism and establishing a reputation with ease. But as Beowulf ages and becomes king, his leadership style shifts dramatically. In his role as leader, he rules for 50 years, I believe, bringing a period of peace and prosperity. And during this period, his leadership is marked by wisdom, generosity, and a profound sense of responsibility for his people. He embodies the more traditional, stable leadership expected of monarchs, providing counsel and protection. And you might think of this as a wise king phase. But as he aged, he eventually had to face a dragon. And as an old man, Beowulf decided to take up arms once again. And while still possessing courage, bravery, his physical strength was greatly diminished. And he ultimately is defeated by the dragon. And this tragic end can be interpreted as a commentary on the limits of even the greatest heroes in the face of aging and mortality. It highlights a tension between the heroic code's demand for direct action and the king's duty to protect his people. even if it means not always being on the front lines. His decision to fight the dragon himself, rather than send younger warriors, can be seen as both a noble adherence to his heroic past, or a poignant resignation to his fading era. But important here, before he dies, Beowulf passes his golden necklace and helmet to Wiglaf. And this act is more than just a symbolic passing of power. It's a recognition of Wiglaf's emergent leadership. He possesses the necessary traits precisely because he alone among Beowulf's warriors stays and fights by his side when all the others flee in fear. He is not motivated by selfish gain, but by honor and duty. He also possesses a strong moral compass, chastising the cowardly warriors who abandoned Beowulf. He does have physical bravery, but also the crucial element of moral fortitude and a sense of collective responsibility that makes him a fitting successor. He represents the ideal young leader who is ready to step into the shoes of the aging, taxing generation, embodying loyalty, bravery, and a commitment to the community's future. Beowulf saw in Wiglaf the necessary blend of courage and principle required to lead his people into the next era. This is not like my arguing that this is the mold for leadership, that this is the golden standard. But what I think the narrative does, in its very male-centered, very European-centric concepts, knowing those things, understanding those things as they are true, present a very specific bias. I do think that what Beowulf does, the narrative, is explore the philosophical, abstract concepts behind what good leadership looks like. I think it wrestles with the relationship between the balances of age and strength in youth and age and wisdom as we grow older, and how leadership requires a combination of multiple traits. Courage alone is not enough. Wisdom alone is not enough. What Beowulf possesses in his middle years is the combination of wisdom and experience to both hear advice, to give advice, to consider the complex situations that his people face, but still the youth to take action and make decisions. And there's an ageism related to this, which I think obviously is limiting of what Beowulf can teach. But I do think that as a story, as a lens with which we can examine leadership, this is an interesting model to consider. I think it's interesting to look at. And we obviously take these types of things into consideration when we look at presidents, to bring it back to our country, as there are age restrictions for who can run for president, for better or worse. And as we make that comparison between Beowulf and the Geats and our own American culture, I do think it's fascinating how different cultures, while defining good or strong leaders in diverse ways, often highlight some common threads. While one culture might prioritize a warrior's strength and battle prowess, another might value a spiritual elder's wisdom in connection to tradition. However, nearly universally we see an emphasis on integrity and trustworthiness, regardless of the cultural context. A leader must command respect and confidence, but those things are earned and not conferred. Good leaders demonstrate a commitment to the well-being of the entirety of the community, not just some preferred group, whether that's a tribe, a family, a nation. These things are constant. It might manifest as a monarch's protection of their people or an elder's guidance for younger generations. There's also a common appreciation for courage, and not just physical bravery, but the moral courage to make difficult decisions or stand up for what is right. And one final trait is adaptability or foresight, the ability to navigate change and consider and then plan for the future. And this might be the most important but least rewarded or praised quality of leaders. But with these common threads in mind, let's look at a few specific examples from some different backgrounds. Another of my favorite stories is Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, which gives us the character of Okanko, a strong and respected Igbo warrior, and his entire life is a reaction in response to his weak father. Okanko embodies traditional masculinity and strength. However, his rigidity and adherence to old ways, a characteristic sometimes intensified by his stubbornness, prevent him from adapting to sweeping changes brought on by colonialism. His inability to compromise, even as his community fragments, leads to his tragic downfall. And this story shows how a once strong traditional leadership style can become a profound weakness in the face of radical shifts. You look at indigenous cultures across various Native American old traditions, there are often figures like Old Man Owl or similar elder animal archetypes. And these figures represent profound wisdom, patience, and a deep understanding of the natural and spiritual worlds. Their age signifies accumulated knowledge and a connection to ancestral teachings. Their leadership is often in consultation, guiding younger generations through stories, teachings, and observation, rather than in direct command. It's a leadership style rooted in respect for elders and collective wisdom. A real-world example is Wilma Mankiller, the first female principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. She took office in her late 40s, and her leadership balanced modern political acumen with deep roots in Cherokee tradition and community values. Her life experience, her age in terms of wisdom gained, was crucial to her effectiveness. These diverse examples show us that strong or weak leadership isn't just about chronological age. It's about the wisdom, adaptability, and cultural context that define a leader at any stage of life. It makes you wonder how, or it makes me wonder how, our own culture views aging, especially when it comes to leaders, and perhaps more broadly, aging itself. And that gets me thinking. We just talked about how different cultures perceive age as it relates to leadership. Like here in the United States specifically, there's a paradox. We all hope to live long lives. We admire wisdom as a trait. And yet we seem to have a deep-seated discomfort with aging, with illness, and ultimately death. Aging is a taboo. Definitely something we'd rather not discuss. At its core, this discomfort often stems from a collective fear of mortality, I think. We live in a society that often emphasizes individual achievement and self-reliance, and the dependence that can come with old age can feel like a personal failure. In many other cultures, particularly collectivist ones, interdependence and the role of elders are embraced, not seen as a weakness. Here, aging is frequently viewed as a disease to be cured or prevented, rather than a natural progression. And this leads to a hyperfixation on anti-aging products, on procedures, and constantly fighting the inevitable rather than accepting. And I think there's some reasons why this is particularly pronounced in American culture. For starters, we have a profound youth obsession. If we consider our media, advertising, television, movies, they overwhelmingly prioritize youth, associating it with beauty, vibrancy, and success. Older individuals, especially women, are often underrepresented or relegated to stereotypical, sometimes unflattering roles. And this ties into our deeply ingrained culture of individualism and productivity. From a young age, Americans are often taught to be self-reliant, independent, and to strive for personal success. This emphasis can lead to a negative characterization of any perceived weakness or dependence. If your value is tied to your ability to work and be productive, what happens when age or illness makes that more difficult? There's a pervasive societal message that to be valuable as an older person, you must remain healthy and productive, or at least financially independent. This can create immense pressure and, unfortunately, contribute to internalized ageism, where older adults may start to see themselves as a burden or less worthy of connection if they can't maintain a certain level of independence. Another powerful force is the consumer culture and the anti-aging industry. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry that thrives on the fear of aging. From anti-wrinkle creams and hair dyes to cosmetic surgeries and wellness supplements, we are constantly sold the idea that aging is something to be fought. The marketing often preys on insecurities, suggesting that looking younger is synonymous with happiness, attractiveness, and even professional success. This fuels an endless pursuit of youth, making the visible signs of aging a source of shame rather than a mark of experience. Historically, attitudes toward aging in America have shifted. While the founders of the United States sometimes powdered their wigs to appear older and wiser, signifying gravitas, industrialization and modernization gradually eroded the prestige and power held by the elderly. As societies became more industrialized, the knowledge and wisdom passed down to generations in agrarian societies became less central to economic survival. The elderly often became more dependent on the adult children or the state, rather than being the primary source of knowledge and authority. Compared to other cultures, this is vastly different. In many East Asian cultures, particularly those influenced by Confucian values, there's a strong emphasis on filial piety, the deep respect of obedience and care owed to one's parents and elders. Aging is often associated with increased wisdom, knowledge, and an honored position within the family and community. In countries like Japan, where the population is rapidly aging, special holidays celebrate elders, and there's a cultural concept of aging as a time of maturity and even rebirth after the obligations of work and child rearing. While modernization is bringing some shifts, the fundamental cultural bedrock still encourages multi-generational households and a sense of collective responsibility for elder care, minimizing the isolation often seen in individualistic societies. Similarly, in many traditional African societies, elders are seen as the living libraries of history, culture, and wisdom. They are revered as transmitters of culture and guardians of the secrets of life. Their presence alone is considered a blessing, not just for their practical contributions, but for their very being. Grandmothers, for instance, are often central figures in passing down knowledge of healing, agriculture, and social values. The idea of placing elders in separate institutions away from their families is largely alien and goes against the fabric of communal support. In many Latin American cultures, strong family ties also lead to a more optimistic and integrated view of aging. Multi-generational homes are common, and elders frequently play active roles in raising grandchildren and making family decisions. Research suggests a higher percentage of Latinx adults feel life is more meaningful at 50, and that 50 is still young, reflecting a cultural embrace of later life stages. As we look at these different examples, the key difference often lies in the balance between individualism and collectivism. Individualistic societies like the US tend to prioritize personal autonomy and independence, which can inadvertently lead to negative perceptions of aging when independence declines. Collectivist cultures, on the other hand, place a higher value on family, community, and interdependence, creating stronger social safety nets and a more positive view of aging as a shared journey. This hyperfixation on youth in America, combined with our individualistic and consumer-driven society, links to a real devaluing of older people. We neglect the immense wisdom, experience, and historical perspective that older individuals offer. This manifests as workplace ageism, where older workers are often overlooked or pushed out despite their valuable skills and institutional knowledge. It can also exacerbate a generational divide, fostering an us versus them mentality between younger and older generations, rather than encouraging intergenerational understanding and cooperation. And we see this discomfort playing out in various ways. Retirement communities, while offering community and specialized care, can sometimes be seen as places where older people are warehoused or kept separate from mainstream society, out of sight and out of mind. And while incredibly essential and often beautiful, the conversation around hospice care is still often hushed or avoided, reflecting our discomfort with the final stages of life. On a darker note, this societal devaluation can unfortunately contribute elderly neglect and abuse, exacerbated by isolation. Studies even show that loneliness and social isolation are significant issues among older Americans, with over a third reporting feeling lonely. And these feelings are often higher among those with poor physical or mental health. It's a strange contradiction. We all hope to live long lives, but we seem to deny the very process of aging. This disconnect has profound implications for how we treat our elders and ultimately how we prepare for our own later years. Perhaps by embracing the full spectrum of life, by acknowledging and valuing each stage, by consciously pushing back against these cultural narratives, and by learning from societies that uplift their elders, we can find a healthier path forward for ourselves and for future generations. And understanding that dynamic, that push and pull between the comfort of the known and the growth that comes from the new, feels particularly relevant when thinking about how we navigate our internal landscapes, especially when we're struggling. Which brings me to our final segment. And today, depression feels like quiet balance. Not emptiness, but almost a kind of resiliency. An ability to keep the negative feelings at bay. A feeling I attribute to where I am right now in my own life. I'm in my 40s, and I find myself in a pretty special time of life. I possess maturity and experience that comes with age, but still possess relative health and physical ability of youth. In this middle time of life feels surprisingly like a strong place from which to manage my depression. Research shows that in youth and young adulthood, we often see higher rates of first-time diagnoses. This period is characterized by intense identity struggles, academic and career pressure, the now pervasive influence of social media, and sometimes more volatile mood swings as the brain is still developing. And then in older adults, depression can be complicated by physical health issues, the loss of loved ones as they are also aging, social isolation, and medication interactions even. Depression is often underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed as just part of the aging process. But what about midlife depression? Well, some research points to a potential U-shaped curve of happiness or well-being with a dip in the middle. Other studies suggest that middle age can also be a period of increased stability and well-being. And for me, this resonates. Research often shows that while initial depressive episodes might occur at younger ages, our ability to cope and regulate emotions can significantly improve with age and accumulated experience. Maybe we can call it a midlife advantage? And I think this is particularly for those of us who have a certain degree of privilege, maybe, in that we have access to mental health professionals, we have adequate tools for coping that we've either learned or acquired that are also healthy, such as exercise and the time for exercise, which is what I'm doing now. But there's definitely a bonus to having accumulated these coping skills. In my 40s, I have a toolkit that I have built up. I know my triggers. I recognize early warning signs, and I have strategies that work for me. I think there's also perspective. I've been through rough times. I've been through happy times. Been through multiple phases of a career. And I have a broad perspective of what life can look like. A bad day or a bad week isn't as terrifying as it might have been in my 20s because I know I've gotten through worse. And critically, I definitely have more established support systems. My people, those around me who I trust, are established. And I have worked hard to maintain a clearer sense of my place in the world and who I am as an individual. In addition, and again, this is a privilege in that I have relative health and physical ability. I still have the energy and health to engage in activities that help fight depression, like rowing. I can exercise, I can pursue hobbies like podcasting, and maintain social connections with relative ease. This ability to physically do things that help my mental health is a huge advantage. My position in life being in the middle often means having both significant responsibilities and a degree of established autonomy, which can provide purpose and structure. But of course, midlife still has its unique stressors. The stress of a career, the stress of caring for aging parents and other relatives, and the stress of child raising, personal health. It's not a magic bullet, of course, right? Being at this particular moment in my life. But the tools to navigate these challenges are often stronger. So today, depression feels a little quieter. And I believe that the quiet has been nurtured by this unique combination of experience, perspective, and continued physical capacity that comes with being in the middle of life. It's a reminder that every phase of life brings its own challenges and its own strengths. And sometimes the sweet spot for managing the internal currents is right here, right now. If any of what we discussed today resonated with you, your feelings are real and they matter. If you're finding it hard to navigate these feelings, if the current feels too strong, please consider reaching out. Talk to a friend, a family member, a mentor, or someone in your community. They can help. If you can, if you're able, reach out to a professional, a therapist, or a counselor. There are resources available. There are people who care and want to help you. Navigating external challenges, understanding our own coping mechanisms, connecting with others, managing our mental health. It's all part of the journey. And it's all hard. But we're in this boat together. As always, I deeply value your time, your attention, and your willingness to engage with these topics alongside me. Please reach out if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for the show. You can send me an email at finless@finlesslives.com, find me on social media, or check out the website at finlesslives.com. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you found today's conversation valuable, I'd be incredibly grateful if you'd consider sharing the show with anyone in your network or who might also find it helpful or interesting. Let's keep moving, and I look forward to our next conversation.